I'm Tessa and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking all about EF Ultimate Break's Germany, Italy, and Switzerland tour. I just got back from this trip. It was my 5th trip with EF. I vlogged the entire thing and those are the most recent videos that I just posted on my channel if you would like to see those. For this video specifically, I want to do a bit of a trip overview, share my thoughts, and I have a haul at the end. Full disclosure, I am an ambassador for EF Ultimate Break, which just means that if you book through my link right here or down below, it will save you $100 when you book on your first trip, and it will help me out too. I went on this trip in August of 2023, so it was the Summer Escape, and I also did the Essential Tour, which means that you'll be staying in hostels and you can have roommates up to 10 people according to their website. But on this specific trip, the most roommates I ever shared with was 4 other girls, so there were 5 of us in one room. They also have this marked as one of their best selling trips, and I can totally see why. This trip is a 10-day trip. Day 1, like most of their trips, is going to be your overnight flight. I think my flight departed at like 8 p.m. and then I arrived midday the next day in Venice, so this is now day 2. I've already been to Venice, so I was like, I will be sleeping. So that is what I did, but a couple people got to go out because we arrived earlier in the afternoon, and then we had our welcome dinner this day. So day 3 was our official full day in Venice. We got up bright and early and took a bus from our hotel to the water taxi port, and then we started about a 2-hour walking tour of Venice, and then for the rest of the day we just had free time. Day 4 we left Venice. We actually stopped in a little town called Vipiteno where we had our lunch break, and then we continued on to Innsbruck, and we got about 2 hours to explore there, and it was a really cute town. I really liked that we got stopped there, and then we still had about 2 or 3 more hours to drive to Salzburg. We arrived at like 8 at night, so this is definitely a big travel day. So day 5 is when we had our walking tour of Salzburg, and I loved this town. I had no expectations for Austria, but it was so cute. We had free time after, and that included time to get our lunch, and then there was an optional excursion which you can pre-book on their website, and let me say, this is my favorite excursion I've ever done. It was so fun. Day 6 was our travel day to Munich, and this I think was our earliest wake up day, and it wasn't too far a drive. It was maybe 2 or 3 hours, but we were doing our walking tour by like 8 a.m. There's always one day on an EF trip where I'm just like dead tired, knocked out. There's just something about it that it happens every trip. This day was that for me. So to be honest, the walking tour in Munich, I was not paying attention. I like barely vlogged it. I could not for the life of me listen to that man.
Sorry to this man.
And then we had free time for the rest of the day, but our tour director did organize a sort of group dinner for us to all meet up and go to the Hofbrauhaus for dinner together, so I did choose to do that, and it was really fun. I do recommend if you're going to Munich, you need to eat a dinner at the Hofbrauhaus. So then day 7 is a fully free day in Munich, so you can choose to sleep in, do whatever you want, and I did a castle tour, which again, I will talk a little bit more about that later. Then day 8, we left Munich and traveled to Lucerne with a stop in the morning at Neuschwanstein Castle just for pictures, and then we also stopped midday at Liechtenstein. So fun fact, on this day you'll actually travel through 4 different countries because we start in Germany, we had to drive back into Austria just to pass through to get to Liechtenstein, and then finally ended in Switzerland. Then we had dinner in Lucerne and just a little bit of free time to explore before we went on to Engelberg, which is where we were staying. So then day 9 on EF's website actually says tour Lucerne, an optional trip up the Swiss Alps, which I did do, but there was no touring of Lucerne at all on our trip because, like I said, we stayed far away. So looking on their website for this video, I actually realized it looks like they're taking Lucerne completely out of the itinerary starting June of 2026. I really loved Lucerne, and I hate that they're removing it completely instead of adding more time for it. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you're looking to book this trip later than that. You might want to incorporate an extra day yourself. If you have them book your own flights, you can ask them to extend a day so that you can spend some time in Lucerne. We were right by the base of the mountain that we went up, which was Mount Titlis. So once we got up the mountain, it was pretty much like free time. There was a lot of fun things to do up there that was all included, and then we worked our way down on our own pace, and then we had our included farewell dinner that night. So then day 10 is your final day where everybody leaves, and I believe I had to wake up at 4 a.m. for my flight that was at like 10 because we all flew out of Zurich, which was a solid 2 hours away. So because EF booked my flights, I did have the included transportation, and I think pretty much everyone on our trip, even if they booked their own flights, was able to just join the transportation. So keep that in mind. If you're booking your own flights, you can talk to the tour director beforehand, and they're usually really helpful with this. But if you do end up having to book your own transportation to the airport, it is very far for this one. So now that I've covered the quickest rundown that I could possibly do of the itinerary, because there is a lot, I want to sort of review the pacing, what I thought about it. So I would actually say every EF trip I've been on has been pretty fast-paced because you're trying to fit so much into one trip. I personally like that because I would rather see more. I'm definitely more of a traveler than a vacationer, if you've seen that comparison before. So I would not say this is the most like extremely relaxing trip. Like, it's a lot. You've got bus days, you're walking a lot, but I wouldn't want it any other way. So I thought the pacing was actually great. I enjoyed that the stops on our long bus days were sort of like actual destinations in themselves. Like, we got real lunches, we got to take pictures and see places that I'm glad to have seen. There is also an activity level rating on EF Ultimate Breaks website, and this trip is rated as low, but a lot of people on my trip was like, that is absolutely not true. And to be honest, I would just never trust that. Like, they're all gonna be at least moderate or higher because you just walk so much. It's definitely not like hiking or anything. It's not intense, but it is probably more activity than you're used to on the day-to-day. So I don't know that I would personally call it low either, but it's definitely doable. Like, I don't think it should scare you, but I would just be aware of that because a lot of people on my trip said that they saw that low activity level and thought we would be doing way less walking than we did. Going off of that though, I actually kind of think that that made the bus days better because it's like the day before we had just walked like 30,000 steps in Venice or Salzburg or Munich, and then you get a full bus day where you can kind of relax your feet. I just think it's important to know your own limits and listen to your body while you're on these trips. Make sure you get enough sleep. I've been on these trips with people who sleep like maybe 2 hours a night, and I don't know how they do it, but I personally know that I need my 8 hours, so I will go to bed early some nights if I need to, because it is really easy to get really exhausted, dehydrated, sick. Like, it happens on these trips, so make sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can keep up. I felt like we had the perfect amount of time in each city except for, like I said, Lucerne. I wish we had maybe one extra day in this trip so we can spend a night in Lucerne. That's the only thing that I would change about the pacings. So first I want to tell you about the accommodations where we stayed on my trip. These are not guaranteed to be exactly the same on every Ultimate Break trip, but 2 of the 4 that I stayed at are on their website as like hotels they frequently use. So in Venice, we stayed for 2 nights at the Onda Hostel, and I really liked this one. This was the hotel that we had the most roommates with, but the beds were really comfortable and the bathroom and everything was really nice. So I would give it like a 4.5 out of 5. Then we stayed 2 nights at the Meininger City Center, Salzburg. This one was okay, but it was my least favorite of all of them. It did get really hot, and I remember having issues with the AC, so I would only give this one like a 3. Next, we stayed for 2 nights in the Ibis Munich City West. I thought this one was great. Beds were really comfortable, only had 2 other roommates, and it was very close to the public transportation stop, so that was really convenient for the free day. And then our last hotel, we stayed our last 2 nights at the Terrace Hotel Engelberg. It definitely looked really fancy and it was pretty comfortable. It was nice because everybody only had 1 other roommate, which is typically the rooming style of plush trips, but I guess we just got lucky on this one. However, I do know from the group chat that some people had some creepy crawly issues in their rooms. Also, my room was on like the basement floor level, and it was just a little bit creepy, giving a little bit sketchy, but other people sent us the views from their room and they were beautiful, and ours was just looking at the trunk of a tree. So overall, I'm still gonna give this one like a 4. Next, I want to talk about the excursions offered on this trip, especially if you have never been on a trip before. You will see the excursions offered on their website before you go on the trip, but then on every trip that I have been on, the tour director will also set up their own sort of excursions that you can add while you're on the trip. So usually you pay for those with cash, so that's another reason you might not know to have a little extra cash on you. And some tour directors will even let you pay with PayPal, and like everywhere you visit will take credit card. So on my last couple trips, I have not even needed to take any euros out at all. This trip has 3 pre-bookable excursions. It is the Alpine Slide in Salzburg, the Dachau Memorial in Munich, and the trip up the Swiss Alps in Engelberg/Lucerne. I did the Alpine Slide. I have never done one before, and I'm so glad this was my first experience. It was so fun. I wish I could have done it. I would have just looped and done it so many times. It's like a whole activity. It's not just like a little slide. It took about 8 minutes, I think, to ride the slide down, depending on how fast you were going, so it's very long. But the views that you get over Salzburg from the top are literally unmatchable, and obviously you have to get up to come down, so you get to ride a ski lift up to the top, and there's like a little bar where we all sat and hung out before. Just so you know, this is only offered in like the summer months. If you go on the winter escape version of this trip, it is not an option. I personally did not book the Dachau excursion because it was on the only full free day in Munich, and I used that instead to book a castle tour with Get Your Guide. This is the one that I booked. I actually booked this trip because I really wanted to see Neuschwanstein Castle. I was like, I'm not going to come all the way here and not go inside. When looking up if it was worth going inside on the internet, I came up with a lot of stuff that said like, it's not worth going inside because it's not finished. When people said unfinished, I was expecting like blank white walls and no flooring. Y'all, it was freaking gorgeous. Also, the castle tour that I booked took us to Linderhof Palace before this, and I had truly no expectations. I didn't even know what that was before booking this trip. I fully was just like, oh yeah, 2 castles. That sounds great. That blew me away. To be honest, I think it was prettier than Versailles. It's so small from the outside that you just don't expect it to look like what it did on the inside. Unfortunately, you can't take pictures and videos, so I don't have any to show you, but if this can convince you to book your own tour and do it, I highly recommend. And then the next morning, when everyone else went to go do the quick little lookout and just look at the castle, me and my friend who went on this tour got to go swimming in the lake below. And there were several others on the tour who had seen that that was maybe an option and asked the tour director if we would have time to do that. And he flat out was just like, no, it needs to be one or the other. You would have to skip the castle viewpoint to go swimming in the lake. But if you do it the way that I did and do the full castle tour beforehand, then you get to see all of the castle that your heart desires and swim in the lake, which was just a wonderful moment. I will never forget that morning. Truly one of my favorite days of my life. And for the last EF offered excursion, the trip up the Swiss Alps, it is much pricier compared to the other 2 excursions, but I do think that there is a lot included in it. The only downside is that lunch isn't included. We did wake up early and go up because it was supposed to rain the day that we were there, so the weather was not being our friend. It was really cool because we did go up 10,000 feet above the clouds, so looking down from the mountain, it was beautiful, it was sunny, but then when we went back down, we were like, oh, it's been raining here the whole time. And there's a beautiful lake that we did not know was there because it was so cloudy. And then there are some other optional activities like a zip line that I would have loved to do, but because of the weather, we couldn't. But weather is something that happens on travel and you just have to kind of go with what you get. So even despite that, I would still recommend this excursion. I wouldn't have felt like I saw as much if I didn't do it. I also want to point out that our tour director did offer 4 additional excursions. I am the only person on our trip that did not do a single one of them, and our tour director actually reached out to me individually because he was like, are you sure about this? Like, you don't want to miss anything? And I was like, I already have my own plan. I am good. And that's something that I really like about EF trips too. People will ask me, am I allowed to do stuff on my own? Will they take away all the planning from me? And that's not the case at all. You can always skip anything included that you don't want to do. If it's something that you prepay for in the cost of the trip, obviously you're not going to get like a refund for that small portion, but you're not required to do anything. And then things like this where the TD adds it once you get there, you just say, no thank you, I don't want to go, and do whatever you want to do instead. Just in case anyone is curious, I did want to let you know what they were. I don't remember the individual prices of these because like I said, I didn't do them, but I want to say the total price for all 4 was like 150 euros, but I really am not entirely sure. The first one was a gondola ride on the Venice Canal, which I've already done, which is why I opted to skip that. If I had never done it, I do highly recommend doing a gondola ride, but it's also something you can organize pretty easily on your own, so you don't like have to do this one unless you just want to be with the rest of the group. The next option was that same evening, and it was a winery tour with an included dinner. So if you chose to do these 2 things, your essentially free day, your free time in Venice was eaten up completely by this. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you want to do any exploring of Venice on your own. This is another place where I did my own excursion because like I said, I've been to Venice before and I really wanted to go see Burano, which is the town known for the colorful houses and it's all cute. So I did this tour again with Get Your Guide and it was so fun. 2 other friends went with me and I will say the vibes on Burano were so much more chill and relaxing than they were on the main island of Venice. So if you want to get away from that hustle and bustle, this is a nice little easy thing to do, and it was also pretty cheap. The third TD offered excursion was whitewater rafting, and this is on the travel day from Venice to Salzburg. If you don't do it, you get to stop in the little town called Vipiteno. I'm honestly glad that I did not do this one, and a lot of the people that did it kind of said they wish that they wouldn't, just because it's hard to do in the middle of a travel day. They didn't really get an option to eat lunch because that's what we did while they were rafting. They did get to change, but they're still kind of like wet from whitewater rafting, you know, and then we get back on the bus and ride for several more hours. And then the last additional excursion he offered us was a bike tour in Munich. This was offered after Dachau on the full free day. So if you are one of those people who doesn't want to have any free time alone and you want to have the EF book everything for you, you can just choose to add all the extra excursions and they'll fill the days for you, no problem. Especially in Europe, I find that these trips are so easy to personalize, but it's just nice because they get all the stressful stuff out of the way, like hotels and transportation, and then you get to do all the fun planning. Now let's talk about the included transportation on this trip. I enjoyed that everywhere we went on this trip was close enough that we could just ride on a bus. We had one bus driver who stayed with us the entire time. There were no internal flights. I think the longest we were ever on the bus at once was 3 hours, but it was usually more like an hour and a half to 2 between breaks, and we would always stop at pretty nice places that always had somewhere to use the bathroom, some souvenirs, food. So I think it's a really nice setup that they do. I definitely feel provided for. I just bring my Kindle and read or listen to music, and the time goes by really fast. Just remember, sometimes on these trips you may need to tip your bus driver separately if they're with you for the entire time. For this specific trip, our tour guide actually told us when we got picked up from the airport that he had already covered all of our tips for the bus driver and that we didn't need to do that at this trip, but usually they will remind you if you need to, so that's just something to keep in mind. On every EF Ultimate Break trip, you're usually going to have some sort of provided like bus transportation or something. Even if it's just for a couple days, you might want to have money available to tip them as well. But they're always like nice coach buses that are clean and comfortable, so yeah, I would give it a 5 out of 5. The only reason I can imagine even docking it a little is just because of the amount of time you spend on the bus. Next, I want to talk about the food. Like I said, this was an essential trip, so the only food that was included with the price that you pay up front was the welcome dinner and the farewell dinner. Although I love this trip, I do think this was the most disappointing welcome dinner that I've had. Normally they're pretty like fancy and nice and I feel like we get a lot of stuff. This one, it was just pizza. We did like each get a whole pizza, but you know, I would have liked some other options, but it was fine because we were in Italy. Italian pizza, you know, I would have liked pasta though, just saying. And then our farewell dinner was a sort of like potluck style dinner. So they just brought stuff to the table and everybody kind of picked off of it. And again, I just didn't feel like there were as many options as I have had in the past, but they were still pretty good tasting overall. I mean, an included meal is an included meal. In terms of the other food that we had there, Germany might have been my favorite. I loved the schnitzel. I love the bratwurst. Like, this was maybe my favorite European style food that I have had on this trip, so I highly recommend trying as much as you can. Also, when you're in Salzburg, you need to try Fabi's frozen yogurt. Our local director recommended to us, and it actually slapped so hard. And then I mentioned a couple other places that we went to in my vlogs, if you want to check out those, but nothing else stands out as anywhere that I'm like, you have to try this. I did want to talk about safety as well, because I know a lot of people, especially solo female travelers, are curious about how safe you felt. I personally feel very safe walking around Europe at night, in the morning, by myself. I never spent much time like completely solo on this trip, but I have on trips in the past and I felt completely fine. The tour director is definitely watching out for everybody, and I feel like they take that part of their job very seriously. So yeah, I would say on this trip, it was not something I had to be worried about at all. I do want to quickly mention the weather. Not that this has anything to do with EF Ultimate Break or is in anybody's control, but in case you're thinking about booking this trip around this time of year. So I would highly recommend going at this time. I thought the weather was pretty perfect. The only day that was crazy hot was in Venice, but especially in Munich and Salzburg, the weather was perfect. Like, I could not have asked for a better day. My cousin actually also did this trip in May, and she said it was warm in Venice and then kind of a little cold everywhere else, so she did need to wear like a light jacket or a sweatshirt. And I was able to wear t-shirts and tank tops the entire time. I have seen a lot of people ask, is it really going to be that cold when you go up the Swiss Alps? And it was cold. I did not really prepare for this. I didn't bring like a giant puffer or anything. I just wore a long sleeve and pants, and then I took my one and only jacket that was my rain jacket because I figured I could at least wear it for like a windbreaker. And honestly, I ended up taking that off because I was sweating from walking around and it was so sunny. So I would say in August, it was like the exact perfect temperature to only need a long sleeve, but some people did wear like hats and jackets. But anytime outside of that, definitely bring some sort of coat, maybe some of your winter accessories just for that day. So when it comes to value for what you pay for this trip, I honestly think you get a lot out of it. Of every other EF trip that I have been on so far, I think this one was the most bang for your buck because you get to see so much, and I really feel like a lot was included. I feel like the itinerary on this one was really well planned out because they basically covered everything that I would really want to see on my own anyway, so I didn't feel as much like I needed to go off on my own and pay for additional excursions. Everything was just included. The only exception to that would be Neuschwanstein Castle for me. I do feel like most countries in Europe you can easily navigate by yourself, and EF is not necessary for these trips, especially ones that I've previously been on like London and Paris. So if I were to pick one that I think was most worth booking through EF, I would also say that it was this trip for sure. Especially because since you're hitting 5 countries, there's a lot more logistics involved, and I did not feel stressed or worried once on this trip because of that. Finally, before I give my overall thoughts, I do want to do a pros and cons list. Because I'm a big pros and cons girly, I like to see it laid out visually. I did try to be really specific with these for this trip, so even if it's something that could kind of be a con, I wrote it down so that you would have that in mind. Also, there are a lot of pros to this trip that I would just associate with every EF Ultimate Break trip, like not having to worry about the planning or stressing, making new friends while you're on your trip, the payment plans. That is a huge one. That's like my biggest pro of EF in general. So as for this trip specifically, I would say a big pro is that you're getting to see 5 countries. If you're one of those people like me that likes to check off and add to their list, this is an easy way to get your numbers up. And then I kind of want to pinpoint 2 sites that I would say are like the major pros of this tour. One being the Alpine slide, if I have not talked about how much I liked that enough already. And then secondly, I would say seeing Neuschwanstein Castle. For me, that was pretty much the reason why I booked this trip. So the fact that there's an included stopover or you have enough free time to go and tour it on your own, I would say is a major pro for this trip. And then I would kind of also say that the bus downtime is a bit of a pro and a con, because I liked having it to be able to rest my feet and get a little bit of sleep since we had such fast-paced high activities on the days when we weren't on the bus. But I know that having those long travel days can also be a con to some people, so I'm going to put that in both columns. Kind of similarly, even though I love Neuschwanstein Castle, like I said, I did use my free day in Munich to go see it, and that personally for me worked out great because we had a full day in Munich the day before with a guided tour as well, so I didn't really feel like I was missing anything. But if you're not interested in doing that, just know that at Neuschwanstein Castle, it really is more of just a photo stop. Also, the amount of time that we had in Lucerne would probably be my most major con, because I really would have liked more time there. All the time that we had to spend there was actually the same day as the Neuschwanstein photo stop, so that was a very packed day, and I truly jammed as much into 4 hours in Lucerne as I possibly could. We went shopping, we had dinner, we walked Chapel Bridge, we went swimming. Like, I don't know if you could fit more in than we did, but I would have liked to do all that at a bit more of a leisurely pace. And the area was just so beautiful. I think it would have been really cool to get to explore just a little bit outside the town and have a few more daylight hours there. Another minor con about this trip specifically is that you're in Europe, so you're gonna have European breakfast. And I don't know about you, but those do not usually cut it for me. So I would definitely recommend picking up snacks for these trips, because we did have some pretty early days and long breaks before we had lunch. So that continental breakfast really left me wishing I had more. The final con that I have would just be how short the length of stays are. I felt like it was enough time in each city, but the part that makes it a con is the fact that you have to repack your suitcase every 2 days. Although, at least for me, I do think having to repack every day helps me stay more organized instead of letting my suitcase explode. So finally, my overall thoughts on this trip are, one, that it's amazing. Like, there's a reason it is a bestseller. It genuinely is my favorite EF trip I've taken so far. Highly, highly recommend booking it if you're interested in it. I think this is also a great first EF trip or first international trip in general, because you get so much included and there's like a little bit of everything. You get to learn a lot of history and see a lot of architecture, yet you still drive through some beautiful, beautiful nature, and the views are stunning. So I really feel like it's unlike any of the other trips I've done so far. The simple fact that I went swimming in Lake Lucerne one day and the next day I was walking through snow on the Alps just kind of blows my mind, and is something I don't think I'll ever get over. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I of course wanted to include my haul, so I'm going to quickly show you everything I got on this trip. Starting in Venice, I got way more than I anticipated buying there, but as soon as we got off the water taxi, I saw this Spritz to go tote bag and I was like, I have to have that. So me and my friend got matching ones. And then from the island of Murano itself, the glass blowing capital of the world, I got this beautiful shot glass with all these different colors infused in it. I really wanted to get something officially from there, but the glassware definitely got pricey very quick, so I just bought this little small shot glass, and then I got this set of 2 mugs from the main island of Venice. I think they're really cool because they have these little like thumb hole divots. They may or may not be hand blown or real or whatever, who knows, but one of these cost the same price as my shot glass, so do with that information what you will. And I got this beautiful little painting in Burano. It's definitely a print, but it's on this nice canvas, and I really want to add it to my travel gallery wall. Also, the island of Burano is apparently world famous for lace making, which I didn't know until we got there, but they had a bunch of lace shops and they were selling these really cool appliques. So I got this one that says Burano. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I think it would be really cool and unique to put in my scrapbook or maybe frame it myself. I don't know, but I really like it. In our next country, Austria, first I got this little shot glass with the little lid. I think it's so fun. I started the shot glass collection for my dad, and then I kept finding fun ones like this, so I just never stopped. And then I did just get this simple t-shirt because it was my first time in Austria. I also got 2 simple little things from Liechtenstein to commemorate another country. I got this patch and this magnet. Then in Germany, I found another shot glass that looks like a beer stein. I just love shot glasses that look like smaller versions of other things. I also got this fun little cuckoo clock magnet, and of course had to get another patch, and obviously I had to get a shirt with the castle itself on it. And then they really got me at the castle gift shop because they had a snow globe, and this is my favorite souvenir that I bought. It's even got the little swans. And then of course they got me with the reusable bag deal. They had this really cool tote bag with the blueprint style of the castle on it, and this is on the back, so I bought that too. Finally, in Switzerland, I got one more t-shirt that says the name of the mountain we went to, and the cutie little matching magnet with the danglies. They also had a spring version of this, which I thought was really cute, but I wanted the snow version. And what do you know, I of course got one more patch. If you have any specific questions, please comment them below. I would love to answer them, and I hope maybe I have convinced you to book this trip or made you more excited for yours if you already have. Don't forget to check out some of my other EF Ultimate Break videos below, and if you want to use some of my links, that would really help me out, and I will see you on my next trip.